Hi guys, this is Come Flying to the Sky. Welcome here. Tonight I am going to share with you one of a few dreams that I have had over this last half year or so. I'm going to share the first one here tonight, and then we'll see. I'll try to share the other dreams here pretty soon as well. So this first dream I'm going to share with you, I had fall 2019, so about half a year ago. And the setting of where it was taking place initially was in the community that my husband and I live in and our kids. We live in a mobile home community, but right immediately next to our community, there is a number of acreages with, a little piece of land, a nice, house kind of thing on the land. So this is the initial setting. So in this dream, me and my family, we were in one of these houses that is near our mobile home community. Now, while we were inside, a storm suddenly came up very, very quickly. And this was a storm that you would know would cause some damage. And so, knowing that, I was about to open the front door of this house to go check on some people that I know in the mobile home community, just make sure everything is like a-okay over there, kind of thing. But as I was about to start opening up the front door of this house to go, the storm went from being really damaging to being really exponentially horrific, and the winds were so strong I physically could not open the front door to go outside at all. So myself and my family, we actually took refuge in the basement of this house. So after the storm passed, I was able to open the front door and walk out towards this community, which is like, a 30-second walk from like some of these houses. And as I was approaching the community, I was expecting some things like, oh man, there's going to be some stuff to clean up, right? Like, there's probably going to be like downed tree limbs, and, I'm sure all the tomato plants are all busted, and there's probably some hail damage. There's going to be some stuff to deal with. But as I approached the community, I very quickly realized that the entire town was actually decimated and every building was completely leveled. Now, this was very shocking to me in the dream because I was not expecting such devastation from this storm. So I walked up to this one mobile home. I knew the homeowner. And so just to, check and see if they are okay. And at the very last second, this homeowner had actually dove underneath their trailer because there was a trench actually dug into the earth to be able to access the utilities from underneath the trailer. And so this homeowner, he had dived underneath the trailer at the very, very last second possible to do so. And this man was spared within a very inch of his life because not only had his entire roof been ripped off and his walls completely obliterated, like the actual floor of the mobile home had been like ripped apart, so much so that only half of his body was actually under the remaining floor that stayed intact. The other half of his body, from about his waist down, was completely exposed as the portion above that had been completely ripped off. It was really frightening to see how close this person had come to the point of death. And it was only that very last minute decision that he had made that had spared his life. At this point, having looked around, I had said, we do not have enough insurance to rebuild. And I knew absolutely that there would not be enough to be able to repair or restore or to rebuild our former way of life. We would actually have to walk away from it. From there, my husband and myself, we walked to the city that we live near, and the same thing had happened there. Everything had been just completely decimated, and there was like no buildings left. Another thing that I noticed in this dream is that everyone who is remaining in the city, they all were getting around on bicycles or walking. And so there was no vehicles. It was very, very specific. For some reason, at this point in the dream, I looked up into the sky. It was just a glance. It wasn't like a main focus of the dream. But I did notice that there was very thick clouds in the sky, and it was almost like they were like kind of like really like scrunched together, and they were thick and they were lower to the earth than they typically would be, and they had a slightly reddish tint to them. Then my husband and myself, we started walking on a road out of the city towards my hometown, which is like 20 minutes out the other side of the city. So we're walking on this road that I know super, super well. It's like, you know this road like the back of your hand. You could like literally drive on this road backwards, blindfolded at nighttime, and you would be like completely fine because you know this road so well. So we were walking on this very familiar road when I just happened to look down and I was like, where's the road? And I saw that the road was actually like washed out. And so I got on my hands and knees and I was kind of feeling the ground. I was like, well, yeah, here's the ridge. Yeah, this is the road. We're on the road. And it was really shocking to see that what was so familiar to me, now I couldn't even recognize it. Now we got to my hometown, and the only thing really of anything that I remember of it is we walked into a building, and there was a friend of ours. He was seated on the floor, very intentionally staring at a model train set, trying to put the train tracks back together. And believe me, nothing would break this guy's focus from putting these train tracks back together. Okay, so this is my understanding of the meaning of the dream. So we started out, my family, we were in a house. So a house, it has, firm walls, a firm foundation, it's well built. It has this place of refuge that we can go in and take shelter in. I believe this is the life of a true born again believer. This is someone who is walking with the Lord. They're building their house on the rock of Christ. And so when the storms come, that house will not fall, right? Because this was the only building, this was the only house that was not actually blown away by this enormous, enormous storm. Now, about the storm, it started out as a good sized storm, one that was going to cause quite a bit of damage, to very, very quickly becoming absolutely devastating. It was so bad. So I believe what is going to be taking place, this might be something that's starting to take place right now, is we are seeing some of these initial things that are causing a lot of damage to many people, many countries around the earth right now with the health crisis and like lots of things that are taking place. So we're seeing, I believe, some of this initial start of the storm. What I believe is going to happen though is that there is going to be a very quick increase of what is to come, the destruction that is to come. So we know that the Lord is bringing judgment upon this earth, and I believe this is a portion of it, but I believe it's going to very quickly go from this amount to being this amount, and it is going to catch so many people off guard. And so this, if anything out of this video, heed this warning. I believe that there is something far greater that is coming that we have not yet seen, and it is going to completely change and alter our way of life. Now, about this town that was a mobile home community, I believe that this represents believers who do not really have much of a foundation. They don't have a place to take refuge. And also, they are easily movable in their faith and in what they believe. So, this person who had taken this refuge underneath at the very last second, I believe that these are going to be believers like I just described, but some of them are going to decide at the very last second to take safety, to take refuge, and their life, some of their life is going to be spared, but it is going to be absolute mercy and grace and just like literally a miracle that they are spared in this storm. Now, the part about not having enough finances to rebuild, I believe, again, whatever this giant, huge storm is coming, it is going to change our way of life so much. It's going to be so destructive that we are not going to be able to rebuild and recreate, reconstruct our life as we currently know it. We actually have to let that go because it is going to change everything. Now, the city that we were walking to, that could represent the world. I'm not really sure, but it kind of would make sense to me. The house is like true believers following the Lord. Then there's that community of Christians who they don't have such a solid foundation, and they haven't really prepared. They didn't take refuge earlier on, last second. And then there's the city, and it would make sense to me, like I said, if that was the world. Now, in the city, though, I did see people riding bicycles. I really think that something that probably disrupts the oil and gas industry might happen. That could be like a spike in the oil prices and no one can afford it, or it could be a disruption in how we actually obtain these products to be able to fuel and transport cars and those kind of things. Now, I looked up in the sky and I saw these clouds. I have no idea what that means. Maybe something will happen and we will notice something very similar. I have no idea. Now, the road that my husband and I were walking on that was washed out, I believe the interpretation to this is the way that we have been so familiar with is going to be barely recognizable after this storm hits. And then the final scene of my friend who is putting back all these train tracks. So this guy, he's a friend of ours. He's really smart in real life. He's an engineer. So he actually works to like support roads and things from so they don't collapse under earthquakes and landslides and this kind of stuff. So it actually is not like a far stretch to think that maybe after this thing that comes that he might actually be working on reconstructing the railroads and that kind of stuff. So the only other dream that I've had this friend in was the dream I had about the BC earthquake, which I've previously posted. And so maybe like if there's like this earthquake, maybe it'll be damaging some of the roads and the tracks, and maybe that will be affecting how we get oil and gas or something like that. Maybe there's a connection there. I'm not really sure. But what I am sure about is there is something coming and we need to be ready for it. We need to recognize the time and season that we're in, and we need to be taking refuge in the Most High. All right, well, thank you for watching, and God bless.